silver lining of Alassiel's injuries and their subsequent detour to Arfol was that they no longer needed to fly directly over either the Ararat Pines or the mountains. Alassiel reflected that they really ought to have taken this path in the first place, and saved themselves trouble upon trouble. She understood Gleandoine's urgency and desire to reach Edlon as soon as possible, but the night in the pines had nearly cost her her life, and it had added 2 days to their journey, to say nothing of the cost to the Lochnan family. The damage they had left in their wake sat like a brick of wet ash in her stomach. She vowed to herself that after things were settled in Edlon, she would find a way to repay their kindness and to help make up for their loss. The town of Arfol lay far to the east of Anui along the Ryat River, and thus they could continue their journey to Edlon by the east road. This road had its origin in Suffolk and Anui, ran through Arfol, and then headed east toward Edlon, circumventing the mountains, slipping between their lower peaks and the Ryat River, winding its way through the smaller towns of Edlon, thus establishing the only trade route on Kibreth. Gleandoin could stop at any point he wanted without fear of Ta or earth dragons, but he didn't. He was flying far faster than before, and at times higher. Alassiel knew he was searching for currents he could use to propel him toward Edlon. By this means Alassiel could tell that the guilt over the Lochinan's loss burned in his belly too. The day passed in uneventful misery for everyone on board as Gleandoin's erratic speeds and jumps between high and low air currents made his riders both cold and nauseated. They stopped once to fill canteens in the Ryat River and to clean up a mess that a flight-sick Ring had made. Alassiel herself felt a bit flight-sick, and all of the children looked green. "I believe your haste is necessary," Alassiel said gently to Gleandoin, "but the werecat is not the only one who is struggling under the conditions of a speedy flight. I don't believe Cale will attack again while we fly in the right direction." Gleandoin flew slower, and the day passed in relative peace. They stopped only once it was well into the night. They were south of the Ryat, along the east road. They had not yet come to the first town in Edlon, but they tiredly made a fire for warmth and lay down between it and the dragon to sleep. The warmth on both sides cut through the chill of late spring, which was especially necessary as they had lost 4 of their blankets to Alassiel's injuries and subsequent escape from Arfol. Before dawn, Gleandoin woke to hunt, and Alassiel woke Narlabet, intending to make him help her hunt for a few small game, but Ring uncurled from his place beside the boy and nudged Alassiel's hand away. The werecat nodded to indicate that they should take their conversation further from the sleeping children. Alassiel obliged. "My boy needs sleep," he said, a little haughtily. "What need have you of him?" Alassiel was a little taken aback. "I was going to make him help me hunt." She gestured to her right arm, which was bound against her ribs. "I am the better hunter anyway, my lady, although I mean him no disrespect." Alassiel struggled not to smile at his arch manner. "Of course not. If you would help me, I would be honored." The werecat bowed his fluffy head, much in the manner of an uptight butler. He was as good as his word, and he returned in under half an hour with 2 beautiful conies. Alassiel received them with pleasure and compliments, but when she suggested that she would now have to wake Narlabet to skin them, the werecat transformed before her eyes into a small humanoid figure about 2 feet tall. He transformed with a dark cloak with a big hood, but when he put out his arms to grasp the conies, Alassiel could see that his skin was covered in fine periwinkle fuzz. He presented her with the finished cuts, with a "Here you are, my lady," before running off to the river to wash. When he returned, he was back in his cat form, and he licked his lips when he saw the strips of meat sizzling on the cast-iron pan. "Tell me, Ring, is it?" "So my mother called me when I was in her litter, as the only child of one of her children with rings on my tail." He waved his tail. "I, however, prefer to call myself Calumbrant." Alassiel bit her tongue hard. Fearful of revealing part of her amusement via mind-speaking, she whispered sagely, "An appropriate name." The werecat crouched before the fire and wrapped his tail around him. "Have you been with him long?" Alassiel asked, nodding to the sleeping boy. "Several years now, my lady." "Are you older or younger than he, if it's not impertinent to ask?" "You may ask me anything," he replied, with an emphasis on you. "I am several years younger than him, but my race ages much more quickly, as I'm sure you, being one of the exalted race of elvenkind, are aware." "You take care of him?" she suggested kindly. "I found him when he was but a small thing. He left his father quite young." "I heard he had a sad story." The Shire has been good to him, my lady. He has creatures who care about him. I can see that. I'm glad of it. The smell of cooking meat, after a day of half-frozen vegetables and somewhat stale bread from the dregs of the food pack, was enough to rouse the children as the sun peeked over the horizon. Alasiel indicated that the meat was not yet ready, but that they could change what clothing they wanted, shake out their blankets, and return everything to their packs. As they finished this and made their way to the fire, Alasiel handed them plates with strips of the salted meat. Allie, it appeared, was perhaps a little too rested for the group's best interests.